That's the
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are pleased to welcome you to our session on Rethinking University Transfer Career and Technical Education Students. My name is Kathy Silberman. I am with Arizona State University in Academic Alliances. I'm a program manager for community college engagement, and I will have my colleagues introduce themselves. And you can go ahead and switch it to the next slide, please. Thanks.
So I'm Michael Voss, and I'm the Dean of Instruction here at Mesa Community College. And I oversee a lot of the career technical programs here.
Hi, I'm Tanaya Dempsey. I'm the Director for Academic Transfer Credit Solutions here at ASU, which is just a long title for transfer evaluation. So happy to be here.
All right. In our presentation, we're going to go over, we'll start off with what are AAS to BAS transfer pathways. So everybody has that great foundation to start with, in case you're not already aware of what they are. Also, of course, address the value of them, and then talk about the articulation, the way that they work together so students can have a seamless transfer from AAS to BAS. And then Michael's going to share some great examples from the field as Mesa Community College and Arizona State University share a transfer partnership. And so you can see some AAS to BAS success in action. And then we will have some time for questions. In addition to questions at the end, feel free to put any questions you might have in the Q&A section, and we will do our best to answer those either along the way or at the end, whenever the different people here see them and can address them. First, just to go over what are AAS to BAS transfer pathways. So it's a little bit different in Arizona and some other states. So first, we're just going to start with that baseline about what AAS to BAS means in Arizona. First of all, AAS is Associate of Applied Science degree, and BAS is Bachelor of Applied Science degrees. In different states, they are called different things. Sometimes they are called technical degrees, career and technical degrees, occupational degrees, and then they have official names like Associate in Applied Science, T, like AAST, and they kind of vary from institution to institution. Here in Arizona, we use AAS to BAS. And so Bachelor of Applied degrees in Arizona allow students who have earned an Associate of Applied Science degree from an Arizona community or tribal college, community college, to transfer and apply 60 or up to 75 at times credit hours toward a Bachelor of Applied Science degree at Arizona's public universities, which are Arizona State University, Northern Arizona University, and the University of Arizona. In general, though, Bachelor of Applied Science degrees build on that technical expertise that students get when they complete an Associate in Applied Science degree. So they have a lot of major hands-on occupational skills and learning that they achieve in that Associate in Applied Science, and a smaller portion of general education curriculum. And then the BAS just builds on that and takes it higher to that higher level of education. And that helps students advance in their careers and prepare for leadership roles in their fields because they then have a bachelor's degree. So I'm not going to read the whole Arizona statewide policy, but I did want to include it just to note that AAS to BAS 60-60 credit model, so 2+2, as you might know it, between the community colleges in Arizona and the state universities, and the 75-45 credit model is actually in Arizona's statewide transfer system policy, and it was approved back in 2001. Coincidentally, I started advising around then, a little bit after that. And when I started, one of the first questions that we would ask students is, after we met them and found out what their major was, it would be, do you plan to transfer to a university, or do you know if you want to transfer to a university yet? And then let's go ahead and look at the next slide. And it was really like a fork in the road. You had to choose between you are headed for work preparation or you are headed for transferring to a university. And if you didn't, as a student, decide early on and you started taking classes, you ran the risk of really racking up a lot of credit in classes that might not apply to your ultimate goal. And so very similar majors, like in business, for instance, or in computer technology type of majors, might have an AAS option or multiple AAS options, and then a more traditional transfer route where it's a bigger block of general education credits and a smaller section of major credits, because it's really saving space, in effect, for you to do those higher level major requirements at the university. And so if you started off on an AAS and then later said, I do want to transfer, then you would find out that, yes, those classes might have done a great job of preparing you, but at the same time, you're missing a lot of the critical requirements for the university, and you'd be backtracking to be able to catch up and get what you need in order to transfer as a junior. So in the early 2000s, with that policy approval in Arizona, more recognition came to associate and applied science degrees. And there were statewide meetings, a collaboration across the state between the community colleges and public universities in the state about how this was going to work. And so the 60-60 and 75-45 models came up, and now, or back then and still now today, students who have that AJAC, which is Arizona General Education Curriculum based, or you might call them academic or transfer degrees, and students who have an associate in applied science degree, all have that option of transferring. Takes careful planning on what you choose, on how you choose to approach it, but we can safely say that all students are potential transfer students if that's what their goals are. And then the reason for this, let's take a look over on the side there, Maricopa Community Colleges, where Mesa Community College is part of that district. If we look at the number of transfer degrees that were awarded in 2020-21 academic year, we see about 6,600. And transfer certificates, and a lot of those are, well, all of those actually are the Arizona General Education Curriculum certificate, and so a lot of those are embedded in those transfer degrees, as well as some students who might have just gotten the transfer certificate. But look at that number on the occupational awards. That includes associate and applied science degrees and certificates of completion. So those are occupational CTE programs. And those students, that's a lot of students, way more than the transfer degree number of students who are potential AAS to BAS transfer students. And so I think there's a lot of untapped area to cover that we can address with this great pathway. And so let's go ahead and go to the next slide. One of the common questions with BAS degrees is, okay, I see that I can transfer well and a lot of the credit will apply, excuse me, but what about graduate school? Am I going to be able to get into graduate school? Well, this isn't a wonderful answer, but it's the truth. It just depends. It's really important for you to do research if you're advising students, and then of course urge students to take the lead on that research, to be aware of their graduate school requirements for any restrictions on types of bachelor's degrees accepted for admission. In many cases, the graduate programs will say that they require a bachelor's degree from a regionally accredited institution. They don't specify which type of bachelor's degree. So in that case, a BAS could be okay, but then you also need to consider, even if it's acceptable to get a BAS and apply to a graduate program and get in, is it the best preparation? Is an associate in applied science in fire service management or something emergency management, something like that, the best preparation for a graduate program in psychology? Is it a match? Is it the best preparation for medical school? So it doesn't mean that you can't get into those schools, but you might have to do a lot of kind of makeup work, if you will, to meet the prerequisites, the specific courses that are required for that graduate program. So asking a lot of questions early on and along the way is very important. Of course, in addition to community college advisors as a wonderful resource to help students weigh their options and make that decision about what type of bachelor's degree they want to pursue. University websites, of course, are going to provide a lot of information, but that human element, graduate school advisors for the programs that you're interested in going to, even if you're not sure where you're going to go, asking graduate school advisors who know those programs inside and out and who might be involved in reviewing applications, as well as community college and university faculty who are the content area experts, and they've been through the process, and they often, of course, have graduate degrees, maybe even several. So those are going to be great options. Resources rather. And then I just wanted to point out that Arizona State University has 4+1 applied science degrees. And so if you're wondering if you can get into graduate school, ASU has some programs that make it just very smooth to get into graduate school because it's built in to the program. So it's a 4+1, meaning basically 2 with you at the community college, 2 here at ASU, and then 1 for graduate school instead of the typical 2 years. So students apply in their junior year here at ASU to complete their bachelor's degree and master's degree in a total of 5 years. So some of the courses that they take when they're senior here count towards both of their degrees, their bachelor's and their master's degree. And then, of course, accelerating that program is very intense. So it's not for all students, but if they do it, it saves them both time and money by reducing their studies by a year in an accelerated program. And I've listed several of the programs, the BAS programs that have a 4+1 option. I don't see all of them showing, but the one that I can't see is applied science. So hopefully you can see that one, but there's some specific ones on the top, the graphic information technology and internet degrees going into the graphic information technology Master of Science degree. And then there's applied science with a ton of concentration areas that you can pursue. Some of those are things like psychology and forensic science, film and video studies. So there's all kinds of options to really customize your program and then go right into a master's degree in several areas, including communication, English, history. So talking with your advisors when you transfer to ASU would be great to look at those options. And so I think with that, I'm turning it over to my colleague, Tanaya. Oh, one more, sorry. Guided pathways, big topic. Sorry, Tanaya. Big topic in everybody's lives. If you're at a community college, sometimes people are like, I don't want to deal with AAS to BAS pathways or some other pathway initiative. I've got my hands full with guided pathways. And you know what? They can peacefully coexist. They both rely on faculty advisor collaboration so that everybody's really, strong on their content area expertise, a case management approach where the people supporting students get to know their students because they're not trying to be everything to everybody in the institution. Early career planning support so that students know their degree options and also know that they're headed in a direction that feels right to them. And then, of course, clearly designed curriculum and ongoing communication between partnering community colleges and universities. And all of this leads to transfer, completion, career preparedness, and upskilling for our students. So it's a win-win if AAS pathways and guided pathways are coexisting in our world. And speaking of clearly designed curriculum, now I'm turning it back over to Tanaya.
Thank you for that. So how do the AAS and BAS pathways work? So we have a lot of clearly defined and understanding statewide, but at ASU, we also make it very clear to students some of these factors. So they are designed specifically for students who have completed their associate degree in applied science. So that means that they have to have completed it and then move into a BAS in order to qualify for the benefits that are offered. The biggest benefit is that we no longer look under the hood. And so what do we mean by that? It means we're not looking at the courses from one to one, meaning, okay, this associate degree came in with all of these individual courses. We're saying no, if you're going into a BAS degree, we're going to take that as like a block credit. So students have an opportunity to earn up to 60 credit hours, and in Arizona specifically, up to 75 credit hours. So it really helps the student come in and know that they already have those first 2 years under their belt, and now they only have to focus on those last 2 years. And again, it really kind of allows for that alignment and not requiring the student to be like, okay, is this going to transfer or not? It won't matter at that point, right? It'll just go right into a BAS and you'll start that program from there. So we do a lot of work to align the AAS degrees in the state of Arizona to our BAS degrees. However, if a student's like, but I still don't understand or I don't know if this is a good fit for me, we've kind of broken down based off of information we've received from our different colleges that have a BAS degree, what they're going to accept as an associate of applied science. So you'll see the first three columns here, sorry, not columns, rows here, show the AAS degree, and then what kind of pairing or BAS program focus there is. So there's at least 4 BAS degrees at ASU that say we will take any student from any completed associate of applied science. They're going to still be successful as they move into that BAS degree. Now, if you go a little bit further, you're going to see that these get a little more nuanced, depending on what the student's looking for or what is required for that BAS degree. So you'll notice a few of them are saying, okay, you need to have at least like a knowledge of statistics, or you need to have some math and science courses under your belt in order to be successful in the upper division courses at ASU. Another one says, we'll take any AAS degree, but it's going to be a lot of the courses they're going to take for their major requirements are going to be really centered around health or health business focused. So the student is, coming from a certain, background that maybe wasn't looking for that type of coursework, then that may not be the best fit for them, but some people might be, so that would be really open to them. And then there's only one that's really restrictive, and that is our early childhood one, just because of a lot of the licensing and all that stuff that comes around with teaching. So that one's a little bit more focused, but for the most part, the students have a lot of options. So even though we do pair them out and try to provide very clear and transparent pathways, we also know that if a student's like, well, I don't see that pairing, is that still a good fit for me? Here's kind of like a little insight into it, that pretty much all of them except for early childhood will take any AAS degree. It just depends on what the student's looking for as they complete their bachelor's degree at ASU.
All right. Well, then I guess it turns it over to me. So I'm gonna kind of bring it from the community college level, and share out how we connect to all of this, because we have a lot of AAS degrees and a lot of students on those pathways. So I want to sort of provide some sense making here. So one, I'm going to get through my slides, and then I'll probably stop sharing the presentation, just navigate to a couple of websites to further illustrate things. But the reason that we participate in AAS to BAS transfer really is just about increasing our institutional goal, or our Maricopa Community College goal, to increase completion and transfer, right? So we know that many community college students, we serve an at-risk population, and completion is not something that always happens. So like in the state of Arizona, things like reverse transfer certainly help, but promoting on the front end to our population of students who's predominantly first generation. So here at Mesa Community College, over half our students, their parents never went to college, right? And so we're not surprised the completion rate is low, and we're shifting our focus to be laser focused on completion. Okay. So ways that we can increase completion, streamline, making it easier for students to understand and know about the AAS to BAS transfers is a big thing for us. Certainly as a result of participating in this presentation, I'm even more focused on it, and I want to have it be super transparent to the end user, who is the student and the people advising students, what options are available in those early onboarding sessions, right? Maybe they're here for just workforce or initial entry certificate skills, but knowing early on that this can lead to something more is really important in those conversations. So later on, I'll share out, a web page of how we try to do that at a very programmatic level. Obviously, to complete, people have to be retained, right? So I'll share a little bit some of the technology we're using to help this very high-risk population, and we're really organized around their majors here at Mesa. Yet, yes, faculty are very involved in course level success, and our residential faculty are also taking stewardship of students by their majors and using this technology to keep students on track. So we have a nightly algorithm that runs and puts people in a risk stratification. So I'll share a little bit about that. And then using tools or processes like credit for prior learning or prior learning assessment, whatever you want to call it out there, is another way that we can attract audiences of folks who have had technical training, articulate that training to career technical credit here at the college, and then have that be part of the body of work that is part of the AAS completion, which in block will transfer over to the university. So we have a big goal here to maximize all that. And there's a lot of things. There's probably about 400 industry credentials that relate to our portfolio that can have some level of credit applied. So we're doing some work there. So here is our program A to Z page. Many community colleges, most community colleges have a page like this. These are big buckets. This is just a little bit of it, but at Mesa, we have about 84 buckets, and underneath that are over 300 individual awards. This is the most trafficked, this is the most frequently visited page for students and for our advisors to find out information about pathway maps, and who the contacts are, and to get people to know what courses they need to progress to complete these awards. In a little bit, I'll go to AJS, the Administration of Justice Studies, and share exactly how we put the information about AAS to BAS transfer on the page, because if it's not on the one-stop page, nobody's going to go find it in another page they have to find. So we're trying to be very conscientious that the essential information, whether it's, hey, this thing has a transfer option, or this program has prior learning assessment opportunity, or hey, there's special funding for this program, we're trying to get it on the one page. So I'll navigate to an example here in a bit. Another thing that's really related to this, with our mission, we just fundamentally believe that the completion and the transfer of all of our programs, whether it's welding or nursing, that the students enrolling in those and completing those should be a reflection of the demographic makeup of our community. So we have some things that we're trying to attract new audiences. We shouldn't think of men as welders and women as nurses, right? We need to challenge those conventional norms. And I'm going to share some examples of how we're doing that visually, to really bring in an audience that's commensurate with the world of work. And, like I said, in order to complete, to improve program completion and transfer, we first have to improve course level success and then retention from term to term, right? So that's really important stuff. So just real quick, related to this, we use a technology called Dropout Detective. It's a add-on to a learning management system. We use Canvas, and it is our retention scorecard. It is the way that we know whether students are being successful and being retained from week to week. I'll just navigate quickly through what that looks like. So our residential faculty serve as allies, and they are allies for their declared majors. So whether that's certificate programs or AS degree programs or AA or AS, we've identified out of our 270 residential, who are the leads for all the program pathways. And we are encouraging them to go in, not just looking at the students in their courses, but even in semesters when they're not taking any in prefix coursework, so welding students who do AS programs take things other than welding, right? And it's good for the faculty to know how they're doing in their English and their math courses so that we retain them so they can complete. So it runs a little algorithm. I'll show you how that works. So I provide a welding example. So if I were the welding program director, this is what I would see. I could grab all of my active major students. I could grab just my AAS or any of my certificates, and I would get a menu of students and how their risk is looking. And it might look like this. If you're a fan of The Office, you'll love the names on here, right? So you'll see Ryan and Creed are not doing well in their classes this week, right? So there's an algorithm saying that these people are at risk of dropping, and we're asking our faculty to engage with those students who are at risk to see what we can do to connect with them, let them know to use office hours, tutoring resources, etc. And here's Creed, right? If you're really a fan of The Office, look at Creed at creedthoughts.gov, right? That's his actual email in the show. But here's Creed, and this is how he's doing this week. And so it's looking at his grades, it's looking at how many assignments have zeros right now, how many missing assignments are outstanding that could revert to zeros, and how often he's accessing Canvas. So I pulled this in the spring. Now, Creed did not actually attend, that's a fake name, but it is a real student. So, and you'll see here, the welding faculty probably knew that the person was not doing well in welding, but they didn't have a sense of this other prefix, this general technology course that they were in and how they were doing. And so, that's really important. So I think that's an important piece. Now, related to this, if you're not familiar with credit for prior learning and prior learning assessment, all this is taking industry recognized credentials, having faculty crosswalk the learning associated with that to what course equivalency there is. And there's a huge menu, whether it's automotive certifications or licenses or computer certifications, all sorts of things. These are important strategies, to use to accelerate and give credit where credit is already due, right? So if someone can walk in and they're already a third of the way, a quarter of the, halfway through an AAS degree, and we don't charge for this for the most part. It can really reduce cost, and that's the number one thing impacting our students. Like they just don't have the resources right now to be successful, and so the less that they have to go in debt, the better. A little bit just on the PLA, it took me about 5 years working with folks at the district to change the policy. We used to charge full tuition on articulating those credits here in Maricopa. And about a year and a half ago, the policy changed where we don't charge anymore for that credit to be articulated. So since that happened, in a little bit over a year, we had about 185 requests for PLA, which yielded for the student around $625,000 of tuition savings. So you can see about how many credits were averaged for the in-state population versus out-of-state population. We have a big out-of-state population here. So it's saving students big money. And anytime we can use PLA or just make awareness about AS to BAS transfers, it accelerates the pathway to university, right? So some things like our automotive AAS and our beauty and wellness AAS, they have some credit for prior learning or prior learning assessment opportunities. Some programs like electronics and fashion do not have that, but they all have connections to ASU, NAU, and U of A, right? So I just shared some examples here of how that works. And but students may not know about it. And so it's really, really important that this gets front and center. So I think that's pretty close to where I am in the presentation. I want to spotlight one particular program. So we have a program with Empire Caterpillar Southwest that's about 2 miles from here. And they previously encouraged all their leadership people to go out of state to the University of Pittsburgh they had a program, they do something with us called Think big cat equipment, right? And they had a thing called Think Bigger with the University of Pittsburgh. Now, because we were able to maximize PLA training, credit for a lot of their corporate training and a partnership with NAU, they now keep all that stuff in state. So they've no longer send people out and pay the out-of-state tuition rate there. And all of a sudden, they get a bunch of credit here. They finish a degree in organizational leadership with us, and then they move on to NAU to finish that up. So it's a really nice program. I said I would navigate to a few things before we go to Q&A, so I'm going to do that real fast. So here's an example on the Administration of Justice page. So I said this is one of those high-level A to Z pages for us. You'll see a lot of stuff on here, all the different pathway maps that we offer, but I'm going to go to the bottom, okay? Under resources for you, we've linked things like any available prior learning assessment credit that they could get. So here locally, graduates of the Mesa Police Department Training Academy, even before they become a law enforcement officer, can get around 40 credit hours for their law enforcement academy training. And we have the information available that there are options, right? So when they go here and they click on this, the way that, I want to get this thing out of the way here, move this down just a little bit. They go to AZ transfer and they'll see everything for the AS degree. Now, this is not a perfect site, right? But it has a wonderful framework. And so we're actively working with the powers that be to make sure that all these linkings are correct, because it's really nice to connect our students to all the available options in a one-stop sort of way. I'll click over here. This is, I wanted to not click there, but, ASU has done a great job of curating all their options for each college, right? So here's a menu page like that. So, our students could go directly and see what degrees apply to, the naming convention here is our naming convention for our AASs. As you click through, you'll find the related links at ASU. Sorry, having a hard time getting to my little dashboard here. Let me move this thing just a little bit more. Okay. I wanted to share just a few other things too. Oh, where'd it go? Timed out on me. I wanted to share, so here's nursing students at Mesa, and I just wanted to highlight a little bit. The blue line is the average student population, which is pretty commensurate with the prevailing demographics here. And here you'll see that nursing students skew white. There's not enough Hispanic students, and they skew very female and not enough male. And so to counter some of that, we're very mindful of the images that we put on our program pages. So we're basically putting forward students in our program that don't reflect the norm, right? To just make it a more welcoming environment. And the same thing goes with welding, right? So here I've dialed in welding students. They skew white and not enough Hispanic, but they skew the opposite. They skew male and not enough female. And on our welding page, here's a prominent video of a female welder. And she actually has a video testimony telling her story. And then, here's that full menu of prior learning things. Right now, we have about 14 items. This list could be about 400. And so we plan on having this built out by spring 24 completely. And then here's that the details on that. What we've done is a lot of the Empire training, there's a lot of corporate training that they can send over to us, and we will take these little modules and equate them to some of the credit that we have here. So I wanted to just share some depth, and I'm happy to share out links later on. I'll put this back in slideshow mode, and we can stand for any questions you may have. I can't, I see there's the chat.
while we're waiting for questions to come in, I just wanted to let you know that if you check out ASU's great transfer tool, amazing transfer tool, My Path to ASU, you will see the AAS to BAS pathways, but you'll also see all the pathways from associate's degrees from community colleges across the nation to ASU. Anik just put that link into the chat if you didn't get a notification, but check that out. It's so easy to use. It's a tool that'll just really outline those clear pathways, and it's based on over 1 million course equivalencies. So there's great information, and then tracking capabilities for students as well, so that they can keep track of their progress.
We do have one question that came in. Do you have examples of how ASU markets these BAS programs on the community college campuses?
That's a good question. I don't have examples other than the AAS to BAS tool. I know is helpful. I mean, when I started advising, we knew about the AAS to BAS pathways, but we didn't know which ones really went with what. And so on the transfer guide pages, where My Path to ASU is housed, that tool that shows the matches, the pairings between the AASs to BAS really helps narrow down those choices for students, so that they can see some BAS options that they might not have even been aware of that they existed. And then they can click on the BAS programs to learn more about them in particular.
And I will share, from my perspective, some of the most powerful things that we can do in partnership with the universities is really make sure that our program directors or our program leads are very knowledgeable about where their pathways go. And, whether they have, highlight that during advisory meetings with community members, or in the program onboarding, orientation process with folks, everything is local, right? And so it matters most, when specific students are looking at specific pathways and they get very specific guidance. And I think that's what our focus is. Repository pages are fine and they're great, but really just think about how can you get the information that's relevant to the stakeholder audience that's going to use it, right? And that includes for us trying to establish stronger connections between our program directors and department chairs and their counterparts at the university who are actually running those programs. So the idea of cross-pollinating people to sit on each other's advisory committees, really, really important. So, for us to try to get folks for the AAS Applied Science, the BAS Applied Science pathways, sitting in on some of our AAS advisories and actually talking to those students while they're on path is really important, right? So, and then conversely, getting the invites to the university pathways and having our leads sitting on those advisories and giving feedback as well. That's always been my focus. And I'll just, as a first gen college student, who did a fire science pathway that led to a bachelor's in emergency medicine, right? And then on and on. Right now, our community college students, the reality is they're mostly advised by friends and family, right? And so we need to make this information as front and center that they can get to on their phone as possible, right? So really important.
We do have another question that came in. Can students in the traditional transfer degrees pursue the BAS degrees?
No. So these are actually open to and designed for AAS degrees. I think there's another question here regarding the realistic nature in which they're going to complete these degrees within 60 credit hours. The reason for this being built the way that it is because we do know students are going to have the unique background that an AAS degree presents. And so these BAS degrees are built with that in mind so that students are completing within that 60 credit hours or are able to maximize their credit hours up to 75. So yeah, so we usually don't open that up for students who are in those traditional ones. However, on the flip side, we do have a lot of AAS students who say, I know my options are BAS, I know what my benefits are, but I want to do English. And they can totally do that. Like that's a completely open to all of those students. So they're not restricted only to BAS degrees. However, once they go into a degree that's not a BAS degree, then they lose out on those benefits of receiving the block set of credit. So that is one thing that, so the flip side is like AAS, you're open to any degree, but you're going to get your most benefits and you're going to have a better time at completing that bachelor's degree by going into a BAS. But traditional degrees do not go into BAS. Those are reserved for AAS students.
I see a question from Catherine about AAS degrees having varying amounts of credits and different types of general education in them. Is it realistic for AAS to BAS students to complete the bachelor in 60 credits? Yes, it is, as long as you have a good pairing that's appropriate and builds on that knowledge, that the BAS builds on that technical knowledge of the AAS. So it's that constant collaboration and communication between advisors, faculty, and students that will help steer that student in the right direction to make sure that they're on a pathway that's going to help them reach their educational and career goals. Once they have that AAS, you know, it could be anywhere from 60 up to, oh my gosh, like 90 credits, but most of them are closer to 60 than 90. But and once they have that, then the BAS, you know, really is 60 or 45 credits, unless there's specific courses that they need to take as prerequisites to take some of those 300 and 400 level classes.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of my answer earlier, they are built for that idea that students are more likely coming in with a block set of credit. So only the ones where I was showing before that maybe they need to have statistics background or maybe some math and sciences. And those are called out in the transfer information for those students. So if they're doing their research and they say, oh, I'm really interested in this engineering specific type of one. And when they look at the transfer information, it will say there is going to be a need for math and science background. But outside of that, if you just choose an applied science, you know, bachelor's of applied science, then they're pretty open and they're more likely to not have to complete anything additional just because it was built to take in any of those AAS degrees. Again, because the idea is to help them persist and actually complete their bachelor's degree here at ASU.
And Sonia, I typed you an answer about the marketing opportunities, but, or sorry about that, about connecting with your new dean. So that would be great for us to look at pathway opportunities for students. And you also asked about adding this kind of information to the AZ pipeline site that you just launched. So I'd be happy to follow up with you on that. I mean, any way we can get information out to students about using My Path to ASU and looking at all of their transfer options. We're all for it, and we love partnering with Coconino. So let's do it.
I think that concludes our questions.
Well, with that, we are here if you need us, if you have any questions at any time. And we thank you for your time and thank you for all the work you're doing as transfer champions and helping students progress through the community college to university transfer pathways. And we hope you have a great rest of the week and check out some of the other National Transfer Week sessions. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, good.